Yo, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Monday Overreaction Show. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. This show is brought to you by RogueShop.com. Make sure that as you're buying your Christmas gifts, whatever they may be, and you're trying to look for that unique gift, there's no better place to look for uniqueness than Texas's home for legal CBD, THC, and more. Use the promo code Orangebloods and get that hookup and take advantage of some of the products that can help you in a lot of different ways, whether you're trying to help your aching bones and joints, or maybe you just want the effects of a joint. Mr. Richardson, it's a Monday. We should let everybody know, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, all those things. You got any big overreactions to get us started on this Monday?
I wouldn't say there's any big overreactions. There's, the things that are going through my mind is obviously the beginning of transfer portal season. I still think it's kind of funny. I mentioned this in the video on Sunday. I do think it's kind of funny that TCU is number 3, but they weren't the best team in the Big 12. Like, there is some overreaction that's somewhere in there for me as far as how the hell does that really, really happen if you just think about it and take a step back. But outside of that, no overreaction. Texas going to the Alamo Bowl to play against Washington. Nothing really to overreact to that. So I'm kind of chilling on a Monday.
I've got 3 overreactions. I'll say them in quick unison, and then we can pull apart whatever you want to pull apart from the beginning of this video. We'll get into lots of things, right? We're going to hit all the topics today. If you want to get in your super chat questions, by all means. If you want to ask about the portal, by all means do that. Here are my overreactions. Number 1, in a 4-school playoff this year, the playoff sucks. I mean, TCU and Ohio State both probably don't deserve to be in a normal 14 playoff. That so many Big 12 champions have had a hard time getting into the playoff, and the Big 12 runner-up this year is the number 3 team. It gives you an idea of, I think, the distance between 1 and 2 and everybody else. The playoff looks pretty whack on paper. Number 2, nobody really cares about the Alamo Bowl. I mean, really. I almost, Anwar, forgot to include Alamo Bowl discussion in my 10 thoughts from the weekend yesterday. And then when I posted the column, nobody's had a single thought about anything related to that game. Everybody's eyes are on the portal. Everybody's eyes are on roster buildings, National Signing Day around the corner. There's not a lot of juice from the Texas fan base about the Alamo Bowl, and I wonder what that means, if anything. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint, like, is a school interested or are they not? Sometimes you think you know and you don't, and sometimes you just need to see the team on the actual day of the game itself and how they play, and then it's a big indicator more than anything else. And then number 3, not enough interesting things have happened in the portal. It's 11 a.m. as we kind of record the Modcast, the Monday Overreaction show today. And I haven't seen anything yet that's really got my blood flowing. There was most of what we've seen today are confirmations of names that announced intentions from, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of last week, whether it's J.D. Coffey of Texas or Hudson Card or any number of about 1 million wide receivers across the country that have put their names in the portal. So I need the portal to do something today to kind of justify the excitement level that a lot of people have on War for the portal. And, oh, by the way, the portal, people complained about athletes getting NIL dollars and everything else, and some of them don't like the portal. But everybody loves NFL free agency. And this is college football's version of NFL free agency. And I think more fans are excited by it than they want to admit. This is actually, Anwar, what they've always wanted college football to be. They've just never known it now until it's started to happen, and you're starting to see this become such an important date on the calendar.
Well, I think we've wanted it to be like that. I think some people have always felt like guys should be happy to get a college diploma and get a degree. And, that's what we've heard most of the years. Like, just be happy that you're getting a diploma. Why are you guys wanting to get paid? So I think it seems like
How dare you?
How dare you want to earn the money off your name, image, and likeness? It seems somewhat sacrilegious as coaches are making millions of dollars off of them. But it becomes a new thing. I mean, it becomes, free agency, and that's just kind of is what it is. It is. I tweeted out the only thing that was missing, from this is the countdown to the transfer portal show. Like kind of like you have countdown to free agency shows. So, we get. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of weeks because you'll have the first wave of guys I think coming, this week. Maybe some guys have played the championship games, right, and get a chance to sit down with their coaches and then figure out what they're going to do, what their next move is going to be. And then, of course, for some, they may wait until after bowl season and what happens at, because, for instance, like we're on Xavier Worthy watch, right? And Xavier Worthy, probably won't make a decision until after the bowl game. So I think there'll be the first wave of guys who are just saying, I'm done with it. Then there'll be the second wave that says, okay, let me get through bowl season and let's go from there. I still think there'll be some excitement to be had. It's not like the old days, right? With NFL free agency at 12:01, the deal was struck. So we haven't had anyone being that overtly just we don't give a damn about any kind of rules or anything to that effect. But I do think it'll heat up eventually.
No, and look, it's 11:11 a.m. It's 9:11 on the West Coast. It could be that before the end of the day is over, we've got streams of head-turning announcements. And to be fair, there have been some interesting names that have entered the portal that are a little bit unexpected. For instance, UTEP offensive lineman Jeremiah Byers is a 30-game starter at UTEP and was the number one offensive lineman in the Conference USA for Pro Football Focus. Now, no need to get completely crazy about Pro Football Focus. That's an Alex tirade, and that I don't want to completely go into. But, I mean, literally 5 minutes ago, one of the best offensive linemen in Conference USA entered the portal. And while that might not be a needle that moves at Texas, I don't even know what that dude's position is, right? I mean, if he's a right tackle, bring him on. If he's an interior player, I don't know. We sometimes on War view this through the lens of just the University of Texas because of what we do, but that guy could end up playing in the Big 12. That guy could end up playing on a team, USC. All of these names, there's two ways of viewing this. I think is it going to impact Texas directly? Like, is this a guy that they will want? Or if a guy leaves Texas, is this a guy that would have otherwise helped us? There will be some people that only look at those two things, but all of these streams of names that are coming in can potentially impact a Big 12 race next year. It can impact the national championship race. It kind of just depends. I'm thinking about Alabama a year ago stealing Vanderbilt's left tackle because they had a big left tackle hole. And, people, because it was just an offensive lineman that didn't get a lot of, discussion when it happened and then beyond. But that's a guy that started like all 12 games for Alabama. And obviously Alabama ends up being the number 5 team in the country in a year when there are only 2 that were really, really good. But, these things that you might not otherwise pay attention to, I think will end up having a big impact next season. And so for me, it makes everything interesting. Who's getting whom, who's getting offers, and which team in the Big 12 outside of Texas potentially improves itself the most through this open door of roster intake. We saw Dion yesterday doing the Colorado opening press conference and mentioning, like, I'm getting ready to kind of go shopping in the portal. And it's just, again, it's just so new. It just is a bit shocking at times to hear it so blatantly promoted in the way that it is now.
That Dion everything was so amazing yesterday. I actually watched him address the team. You talk about guys who just look shook, like I don't know what the hell is about to go down, but it don't sound good. And when Deion's talking about, he's bringing in guys, like I'm bringing in about 10, 11 guys. That's my quarterback over. Like it literally was like, that's the quarter. I'm like, has he even gone in the portal yet? Like, how is this?
He announced his son was in the portal when he announced that his son was a new Colorado starting quarterback.
I was like, only Deion would do something like this. It was absolutely, I was watching this whole thing fascinated, and I saw these scared faces in that crowd. But yeah, I mean, you couldn't imagine a couple of years ago a new coach. It was you could even bring a guy with you, catch. That guy was at that program. That guy has to stay. And now it's like, I'm bringing in my guys. Like, I don't know what you guys are going to do. You guys suck. Like, I'm bringing in some dogs, I think he said some dogs that can hunt. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting because there's almost two tiers of guys, catch, right? There are the guys who just don't get PT, the guys who just don't get playing time, that they're okay. They're okay. Maybe they find a home somewhere. They probably have to go down a level. A couple of guys will go up, but most of those guys are gonna have to go down. And then there's gonna be the guys who can be in the 2 deep. Those kind of guys. And so if you're Sarkisian and the staff, you kind of have to wait for those 2 deep guys. You really want to hold out for the people who can be the starters of the world, right? Like the Jordan Addisons of the world. Like you want to hold out and say, is that guy going to be available? And so it'll be interesting to see how many spots that he uses in the first wave of free agency versus the next wave of free agency that will come in the spring. But it'll be interesting to see how they sort out who to get, who to go after, and we'll know what, last year became evident what they thought was the need, because it was every linebacker in the portal got an offer. It'll be interesting to see what's that one position, maybe it's receiver, where they're just throwing offers at, trying to get people.
When I look at Texas, there was a wave, right? There was like a 2-hour wave where like 7 guys last Tuesday announced their intentions to enter the portal. Ends up being 8. I'm looking at the latest roster, the scholarship board that Blake puts together for us. Texas could probably use like another 7 or 8 guys to enter the portal. I mean, they're sitting at 83, and that doesn't include. And look, some of these guys, it remains to be seen what happens with Junior Angilau. We assume that Jordan Whittington at least is leaning towards coming back, but there hasn't been an official announcement. But for the most part, I'm looking at the roster. For them to be able to do what they want to do in the portal, they still need to, I think, probably have 7 or 8 guys leave. So, one of the conversations on war for me is, you and I don't want to be putting guys on blast and saying, well, if we're talking about guys that should be looking into the portal, here's the dead weight on the roster. But anybody can look at a scholarship board and go, oh, well, yeah, I forgot that guy was even here. And he ain't playing. So maybe that's a spot. There's a lot of things that can cause a guy to leave the program. I think it's important to mention that Texas has historically averaged well into double digits every year when it comes to attrition, basically for the last 20 years. This is still a roster, though, that I think needs to be churned over a little bit more. And I think that while we talk about who goes in and who will be interesting for Texas, I think there's still more to come on the portal for departure list for the Longhorns, even if last week felt like one big swoop and maybe there wouldn't be another big number to come. But, this is still a roster that I think has some turnover left in it with regards to what's currently on and what will eventually come off.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fantastic point. And will there be some more guys that over this next couple of weeks, start seeing the writing on the wall. Sarkisian's, I think he met with all those guys last week and kind of let them know where you are. So you may have a contingent of guys catch that says, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and get through the bowl game. This will be my last hurrah. And then after the bowl is over, I'll just go ahead and go. Like, I already know I'm out, So there's certain guys that they want to get ahead of it. Like a Hudson Card makes sense for him to get ahead of it. Like, you gain nothing if you're going to be here in the month of December. Go find your new home. You could get somewhere in January and be good to go. And there's other guys catch who, maybe that they're that third, fourth person on the roster. And at that point, you just tell yourself, all right, let me eat good for one more month, catch, right? Let me have some good UT food, some good UT dining, because my next spot ain't going to be this good, right? It might be some PBJs, right? It's not going to be as good as this. Let me enjoy these facilities. Let me just see if I can go to a bowl game, get one last swag. It's kind of like when you
a little bit more game tape. Like, maybe you'll play a little bit in this game.
Something, and give yourself an opportunity to kind of set yourself up for a little bit. Like you said to yourself, all right, I know I gotta go. But it's kind of like sometimes when you gotta go and you're leaving that job, you start figuring like, I'm gonna take the stapler, my man from Office Space, right? You're just gonna I'm gonna take a couple of little extra things that are kind of laying around here. And then, on December 30th, then I'll go ahead and go and jump in the portal.
Do you think, how far away are we? Like, you and I have some hesitation. That what you and I won't do right now is look at the scholarship board and say, how long until this guy goes in, right? Like, it feels really tacky. How long before this thing, though, does it, like, how far away are we from that will be part of the deal moving forward? Is that we'll point out the offensive lineman who's been here 3 or 4 years, can't get on the field. Like, I don't know. Like, it feels 2 years ago, it would have been blasphemy to do such a thing. Now, it feels kind of 50-50-ish. I just wonder if moving forward, in 5 years from now, are we looking at the receivers on the scholarship board that haven't played at all, and how long until we're talking about them openly, their names in these videos? Class be damned.
Catch, I mean, is it by signing day, right? I mean, is it by the next couple of weeks where you're telling yourself, okay, this guy is coming in. This guy's these are the early enrollees, so we know these guys are on the board. Like, are we waiting that long? Because for some folks, catch the conversation of bowl practices won't mean anything, right? Because you ain't gonna be here, and they will look. This is kind of where we're at right now. This is not just a Texas thing. Coaches kind of tell you, hey man, you ain't gonna play here, so you might want to go look somewhere else. Just going to let you know. We can help you. We'll help you find a good landing spot, but we just want to keep it a buck. You're never going to play here, and we got a new batch of guys that are coming in. I mean, is it signing day when that reality starts to kick in?
I don't know. I was thinking years down the road, but maybe it is until signing day. I know this. I think there's going to be a growing expectation around the country that, hey, man, we need to take advantage of the portal. Whoever we is. Texas A&M didn't do any portal business last year. They just went 5-7. I guarantee you there are some Aggie fans who were like, we got to get better. we have to find a quarterback. Like, so
Correct.
We is everybody. And I think among power conference schools, there will be an expectation that you're bringing in like half dozen, 6, 7, 8 guys that can be starters, that can improve your team. When we look at Texas, they could use a couple wide receivers. They could, in theory, use a right tackle to come in and push Cam Williams, who really is completely unproven. They could bring in a center who could push Jake Majors, because if you're trying to improve by thin margins to help you go from 8-4 to 10-2, 11-2, whatever. You do whatever you got to do. You're looking for an edge. You're looking for a couple of linebackers. You're looking for a punter. You're potentially looking for a safety or a defensive back or two because you've lost a couple. Like suddenly, it's like a little jackpot, right? It's like 2 receivers, an offensive lineman, an edge, some linebackers, 6, 7, 8. You start to get to a number, and the only way Texas will be able to pull that off is if the roster does get cold a little bit more. If some of these guys that aren't playing that haven't quite been given the hint, like that's one of the things about college football that just hasn't completely figured itself out yet is what do schools do before you would just let that guy stay on the roster, let him graduate, build up the graduation rate. But now you're constantly needing numbers. And I think it will be part of the ugliness of what happens moving forward is that you're probably going to hear some of these guys' names mentioned specifically on Orangebloods, on social media, whether it's fair or not.
Yeah, but I got a question for you, Catch.
Yeah.
So let's not go names, right? Let's go think of what you know about Sarkisian. If I had to ask you, hey, put $20 down, something, or $10 on the first position that Sarkisian acquires in the portal, just position. What do you think is the first one that you're like, that's the first signing? Not the person, no names, just the position. What do you got?
Wide receiver, easy.
I was exactly going to say the exact same thing.
I think the more difficult question is, what's the second position? Because I've been hearing about Texas and wide receivers for months. So, yes, and even a week ago, you were checking with people, and they're like, we're thirsty for all these dudes.
Yeah.
We want multiple players coming in to improve this position. So wide receiver is easy. If I were to go number 2, I'll go defensive back because there's more of those seemingly available than I think linebacker would be up there for me in terms of what you would want to go get. But that list isn't quite as populated the way wide receiver is. I think that will be an easier position to go get. And then defensive back kind of the same way. I mean, that safety, McGill from Stanford, who was their captain last year, and this has been like a 3-year starter and is leaving as a grad transfer. He feels like the kind of guy that would be easy. You're Texas, go after the Stanford kid. He gets to come back home. He played his high school ball in Texas. That's the kind of profile of a guy that I think if I'm Steve Sarkisian, I would be very interested in. Who makes my team better on the field? Who improves the makeup of my locker room, right? So this guy's a captain at Stanford. He ain't hurting the locker room. And who's off the scholarship board in a year from now to give me a number when I want to bring in a guy in 2024? So, I think that guys, if it's check mark, those are the easy guys to go target. And there's a few of those in the secondary that are available.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, because as I look at the scholarship board as you're talking, right, they've got I have an older version, so I apologize because O'Meary wouldn't necessarily be on there. But then they're taking 2 receivers in this class, as of right now. So when you start looking at that, and give me from a historical perspective, usually how many receivers usually go in a class? What's usually the average number? What have you seen highs or lows?
Like 2 or 3 from a low to 5. Mm-hmm. I mean, both Sarkisian and Herman love them some wide receivers. I think Texas is, DeAndre Moore is a Louisville commitment. That was already shaky. Their offensive coordinator just took the Cincinnati job today. So suddenly, I think DeAndre Moore no longer being committed to Louisville. That's going to happen at some point. I'd probably bet like a really good steak dinner. I wouldn't say a paycheck. I don't want to be throwing my paycheck out there. But I'll do like a nice steakhouse dinner with like all the trimmings and fixings that kid probably ends up at Texas. if I had to, even more so than like a future cast, I'd bet a steak dinner that might happen. So now you're sitting at 3 through the high school ranks, and you still would like, because you know what, their scholarship number, even with Niblett and Cook right now, is at 10 wide receivers. So after O'Meary's gone, after they had their little bit of attrition last week, they're sitting at 10, but that includes Xavier Worthy and Jordan Whittington.
Yeah.
I mean, if Xavier were to leave, now you're down to 9 before adding that. And again, that's 9, including Niblett. The wide receiving unit right now looks like this going into next year. Your seniors would be Whittington and Nayor. Your juniors are Xavier Worthy and Agiye Hall. Then you go in, so that's 4. You go into your sophomores, and you've got Brennan Thompson, Savion Red, Jaden Alexis, and Casey Kane. And then you got Niblett and Jonte Cook. When Sarkisian first got here, there were like 20 wide receivers. 2 years later, that you probably want to have 13, 14. I mean, that's a position that typically it's been so much higher than that on WAR for the last half decade that I don't even know what the right number of wide receivers on campus a school should probably have, because Texas has always been way over that number. You want to be able to go, I don't know, like how many wide receivers would you have on the roster?
It's so funny because it reminds me of, because they thought there were too many wide receivers that, you kind of start cutting, and you ever start doing something, a project where you start cutting, you're like, damn, I did too much. So they try to even it out. You cut some more. The next thing you know, it's like it's shaved all the way down. You're like, damn. I think that's kind of where we're at, where they had so many, and then he scaled it back, and now you're on the verge of having too little. You're going to have to build this back up. You probably have to get back up to the 15-ish range catch. Probably
you have to take a lot of guys, because the thing is, I'm not going to go into specifically naming guys, but they have guys at the wide receiver position that don't look like they're going to play a lot. And so they could be players that eventually, let's say, there are going to be some guys I think that would wisely wait until after spring ball to make some decisions. But, not everybody is Xavier Worthy and can just go wherever they want to go.
Yeah.
When they enter the portal. The problem with waiting till May for a lot of these guys that are borderline players is that schools will have filled up by then. A lot of schools will want to get as much done as possible, and your options just get limited a little bit. And the last thing you want to do in a portal where more than 50% of the players that enter the portal aren't finding new schools is enter the portal when it's too late to fully be able to maximize whatever value you have. You enter too late, you might not even be playing football next fall if you're not careful. Or if you are, you've taken a real step back and suddenly you're playing FCS instead of FBS, and it's just not what you signed up for.
And Catch, you don't want to be that person that is 2 years removed from high school and hadn't played a lot, because you're not as hot as you once were. If it's 2 or 3 and you've kind of been – you redshirted and now you've been on the bench a little bit, like programs look at you and say, well, why can't he play over there? And no one remembers your high school things. They just think, okay, you're just not as good. And so there's the other portion of it. Like, how long have you been on campus? Because you've been on campus for more than 2 years, 2 in a buck or so. People, you're not as hot. And it's in your mind, Catch. They'll tell themselves, they'll remember it was just a couple of years ago that I was just being recruited and everybody loved me and everybody wanted me and everybody told me I was so good, this and that. But in 2 years in a recruiting cycle, it's like an eternity. Like some of those coaches aren't even there. The programs have changed, systems have changed. And so that becomes the other thing. Hey, do you got to figure out like what you want to do? To your point, if you're really about that life, you do it now. Like you can't wait till the spring, because things will fill up. spots will fill up, and you will find yourself on the outside looking in. The guys who, if you're really about that life, you're like portal now, and let me see if I can find myself somewhere. Because the later it gets, you're only going to take a couple of guys, and at that point, you're only taking positions of need. So in the spring, it's going to be, I got an injury. Who can I have fill in or kind of help us out? Or we're kind of low here. But it's not going to be this like free for all where it's like, oh, well, I could have this guy. Why not this guy? Like, it's going to be real specific targeting. Those people want it. They've got to move fast.
You got to have good advising. Like most college football players they can't see the picture from 30,000 feet up.
Nah.
They've got to have somebody who's realistic with them and say, hey, what do you want out of this? Because if it's not working here, where would you like to go from there? And then it's like, well, let's think about what the best plan is if that's the goal. And I don't know if a lot of these dudes have that. It's a lot more willy-nilly than it would be for me if it was my kid. I would be mastering the art of how do you work the portal. No, I don't know that we're there yet. Real quick, Eric Torres, our guy, your guy, jumped in the super chat earlier. I don't know if we're segueing or not, if we're just answering this question. How bad was the Big 12 officiating this weekend? Embarrassing for the league? I can't say I noticed.
Only reason Eric noticed is because his wife is a huge TCU fan, so he went to the game, and so he was there at the stadium. So that's the only reason why it probably resonates with him. But Presidente probably also had a bunch of drinks too. So let's just put that there on the table as well.
What are your expectations for Big 12 officiating? Ever. Seeing bad officiating in the championship game was good, I think, for Texas fans. They need to know that it's not just them. Because Texas legitimately has been screwed through the portal a lot through the officiating over the years. And I watch so much Big 12 football, Anwar, that I just see bad officiating every weekend. No amount of telling Texas fans that it's everywhere in the conference ever makes them feel better. But maybe watching a non-Texas game, a championship game, and walking around feeling like there's just bad officiating, maybe that's what Texas fans need so that they don't feel like the Big 12's out to get Texas. The Big 12's out to get all their constituents at this point with the mess that they put out on the field.
To me, Big 12 officiating kind of becomes like that white noise after a while when you got like a bunch of kids in the house and you just listen for like when they get hurt. And outside of that, you don't hear anything else. It's just a bunch of chatter. So for me, that's what Big 12 officiating is. I expect bad calls the entire time until it's something so egregious. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And then outside of that, you kind of move on. Like, that's why I view Big 12 officiating. I have zero expectations. And it's only a surprise when it actually goes well. That's when it's a surprise.
Perfect metaphor, Anwar. It is a gang of kids in your house. And as long as you don't hear hospital visit level crying, you ain't listening. And I think that's exactly right. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, what was the bad officiating? I guess the ball over the goal line and over, like, there were things. I just never expect the Big 12 officials to get it right. Here we are. You get what you pay for. The Big 12 doesn't. I don't think they have full-time officials. Whatever it is that they're not doing, they're not doing.
And they don't care.
Yeah, I mean, those checks are still coming in. Anything from championship weekend jump out from you? I mean, TCU loses, USC loses. In the end, there was some pretty good football, but I don't know that there's anything on Monday that's still resonating with me.
No, I don't. The USA. It's interesting to see Cam Rising. Do what he's done out there, and think back to yourself like back in the day, when if given a choice between keeping Cam Rising or Casey Thompson, the previous staff wanted Cam Rising. Like they thought that was the guy. They thought that was a future NFL player. So it is interesting to see him go on. And Rising's not something that you look at, you go, wow, like this guy is killing the game. But he's good for Utah, and he's good for what he does out there. So it was very interesting to, watch that game. And then, there is kind of it becomes a question of when you look at that TCU Kansas State game, you see Kansas State, basically hoisting the trophy and then pulling off the win. And boy, Sonny Dykes, boys, sometimes that the play calling. I mean, Sonny Dykes has been gambling this season, and he gambled on a goal line catch. It just finally caught up with him, right? It just finally caught up with him. And I think, one of the things we had talked about in our prediction show last week was, you had said like, hey, at some point, Cinderella, it's going to hit midnight, right? At some point. And I think it finally, all the come from behind victories, so on and so forth. Dykes gambles. He tries to score a touchdown. They don't get it. There's a part of me that catch that from Overreaction Monday. You just wonder, damn, how close Texas could have been. I wonder if Texas had played either one of those teams in that game, what it may have looked like for Texas. What does it look like, for Bijan in that game, so on and so forth. There's a little bit of a what if portion of it as relates to that. But TCU being in there, again, props to them. I don't think they're that good. I don't think they're the number 3 team in the country. I find that kind of hard to believe.
The problem is that there really aren't 3 deserving teams. So I don't think TCU's that good, but I don't know that TCU might be the 3rd best team in the Big 12. I say that with respect to them beating Texas, right? But Texas went to Manhattan and beat Kansas State. I do find myself wanting to give Kansas State a lot of props for, I think, week in and week out being the steadiest team. Like, but once they got through the early part of the season, they were blasting people. I got to give props to Kansas State. In the end, I kind of thought the more deserving team won the Big 12 championship. And maybe that's not fair to TCU because they were undefeated. But I don't know, man. Like Texas Tech had a lot of Oklahoma State. God, what am I talking about? I got every team on the brain today except for the right one. Kansas State was so impressive in some of their wins. And in the end, they're probably as impressive as any other team in the Big 12. Simple as that. I mean, I thought they were very deserving winners on Saturday.
It is an interesting stat and something interesting just for the conversation. And Jeff Howe tweeted this out over the weekend. But basically, the different Big 12 champions since 2009, and basically we've got Oklahoma, Baylor, now K-State have been able to win there. TCU's gotten to the game. Oklahoma State and TCU have been there as well. And so it's just interesting when you start to see other coaches come into these programs and be able to find a success. Kind of goes back to a Texas thing where you're saying to yourself, okay, Texas, what about you? When is it going to be your turn? Because we've seen a new coach come in with Sonny Dykes, have success. We saw Dave Aranda come in. He's been able to have success. We know the success of OU, what they've been able to do. Oklahoma State was able to rise up. And at some point, you tell yourself, you're kind of sitting there, right? It's kind of like sitting in the audience of Price is Right, and everyone else is running up. But you're sitting in the audience and tell yourself, okay, well, when do I get to run up? When is it going to happen for me? And that's kind of one of my things I kind of think of, okay, when will this happen for Texas? And I know it's a bigger picture. It's a broader conversation. But, when you ask me from a thought process over the weekend, that's kind of my thing. Like, damn, a lot of other programs that have been able to get there Texas has been there one time since 2009. And at some point, I keep asking myself, when is it going to happen?
Kansas State has won 2 Big 12 championships since Texas has won its last one. Texas has won its last one in 2009. K-State's got a couple on the board. We're in the worst era of Texas football ever in history with regards to accumulating rings and trophies. And this one that we're in is reaching, it's way too long. We're decade plus now. So, there's no way to get around from the fact that it is a cloud that hovers over the Texas football program. It is Steve Sarkisian has to get that off this program's back, because quite frankly, it's not for me to say that something is embarrassing, I suppose, for the University of Texas football program. People could get mad at me if I say that. But Kansas State winning 1 year after Baylor won, and Texas can't really get close to the damn thing at all. I mean, I saw people on Orangebloods today talking about, we really won that Alabama game. And I was like, how thirsty are you that you're trying to claim games that don't even change your existence? That Alabama game's meaningless now. And Alabama wasn't that good anyway, and you lost that game. No matter how you want to spin it and the officiating and all of that, you lost. And it's been so long since Texas has hoisted a conference championship that Texas fans are like thirsty for anything they can get their hands on. This streak is just ridiculous because Texas's natural resources are so much stronger than schools that are actually winning championships. And, that's what Sark has to do. Sark has to change that. And the thing is, it's got a little bit of a narrow window. It's now or never. They're going to be in the Big 12 soon. In the SEC soon. And whether, just Georgia alone, it's not that the SEC is so much stronger than everybody else. It's that the teams at the top of the SEC are so much stronger than just about everybody else. Every year you have to get through both Georgia and Alabama to win a conference championship. It doesn't happen very often in the SEC right now. But if you're Texas, you got to win onward. They have to win a conference championship before they go into the SEC, or how long does that streak go?
I mean, we're talking about Nebraska kind of streaks at that point. I mean, that's how. Yes, if you can't do it in the Big 12, to expect it to just automatically happen in the SEC, that's asking a lot. I mean, that's asking. It's a hell of a freaking jump. I agree with you. There literally is a 2023, 2024 window before we got into this. So it's basically a 2-year window. It's a 2-year window of what we would consider your easiest path to a conference title and your easiest path to try to get into the CFP. And Des is saying it's an overreaction.
That's what we're here for.
Overreaction Monday. Des, good morning. I hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good weekend. It's a 2-year window for what we would consider your easiest path to a conference championship. 2-year window.
Not saying they can't win the SEC, but come on. You can't expect this is going to happen right away.
Correct. Those guys, because every game is a killer game. And we know every game is going to be extremely tough. To the point where I've been beating the drum, man, scrap this hard non-conference schedule. Make your life easier when you go into the SEC. To hell with Ohio State. Tell them we're done with that conference.
Put your vanity aside,
Put it all. Michigan don't need to see you. I mean, look at the future schedule. Pull it up. Okay, you want to pull it up, or do I want to? You got
to do it.
Pull up the future schedule and tell me that thing, Overreaction Monday, that thing doesn't need to be scrapped immediately.
Yeah.
SEC, all
right,
those.
I got it pulled up. You ready for it?
Yeah.
So next year you're at Alabama.
I mean,
thing is, Alabama's going to go get a quarterback in the portal. So it'll be really interesting to see. There was even some Hudson Card, Alabama, Georgia conversation today, which I won't say it would shock me, but it was certainly surprised the hell out of me. In 2024, you get Michigan at home.
Come on. What are we doing? What are we doing?
And you're playing UTSA that year at home, which, who knows? Maybe by that time it's UTSA with a new coach and it's not quite the same thing. 2025, you're at Ohio State. How about them apples?
Ohio State in your non-conference schedule before you go into an SEC schedule.
That could be their first year in the SEC, and they got to go to Columbus before they deal with any of that other stuff. They may have 3 rivalry games in 2025: Arkansas, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma, and at Ohio State. That sounds like fun, though, but boy, that's how coaches lose their jobs, too. It's like, why'd you go 8-4? Well, did you see the schedule? Nobody cares. Then they play Ohio State in 2026. Then they're at Michigan in 2027. So look, man, it's just Alabama, Michigan, and Ohio State all the way up until 2027. 2028, the good news is they've got Georgia.
So that could feed into their schedule potentially.
Yeah, so that'll just get absorbed, you would think. Like I can't believe that's even still on the grid. But in 2030, they're scheduled to play at Florida. 2031, Florida. And then like Arizona State in 2032 and 2033. No. Just play Rice.
That's what I'm saying. I hate Chris Del Conte. I hate this is non-conference. Again, some of this was before him. And I get that, the appeal, the thing was, okay, they want to give something for their fan base. They want to give some good games for them to see. I mean, Eric, yes, you want to see Michigan and Ohio State, but do you want to see wins?
Do you want to go to Michigan or Ohio State more than you want to see Texas in the playoff? Because by then it's going to be expanded to 12 teams. And the margin of error is that loss potentially. Like, you got to ask yourself risk versus reward. And this is why I keep saying Texas fans and administrators, they got to put their vanity aside. Like,
can you do me a favor, Catch? Do me a favor. While you hold that thought, pull up Alabama's future schedule.
Okay.
And then
look, I can almost live with them doing something like that because they're Alabama.
Correct.
All right, here we go. Alabama. Now, clearly they get Texas next year at home. In 2023 or 2024, they're at Wisconsin. So they've got and they're at Florida State and at home against Wisconsin in 2025. Then they're 2026, they're Florida State at home. They're at Ohio State in 2027, home against Ohio State, at Oklahoma State in 2028, at Notre Dame, Oklahoma State at home in 2029. What is Alabama doing?
About to go down the tubes?
They just why? I don't get it.
Now, here's the last one, Catch. Here's the smart one, okay? Pull up Ole Miss, okay? Just pull that up for me and tell me you don't think that needs to be what Texas mimics as far as scheduling is concerned.
All right, so next year they're at Tulane, which Tulane's going to play in a New York 6 game this year, but they didn't.
When it was scheduled, it was an easy game.
2024, they're Furman, Middle Tennessee, at Wake Forest, Georgia Southern.
Thank you.
2025, they're at USC. 2026 are at home to USC. 2027, it's Oregon State. 2028 is at BYU. 2029, they get BYU at home.
But Catch, you skipped over the good stuff. 2023, Mercer, Tulane, Georgia Tech, ULM. The other ones are 2024, Furman, Middle Tennessee, at Wake Forest, Georgia Southern. Do you get what the game that they're playing over here is?
Well, it's the game that Oklahoma State, Oklahoma in a lot of years, Texas Tech, Baylor, they tack those 4 wins. They're building their 1-loss record in non-conference. Yes. And more times than not, it works.
It worked for TCU.
It absolutely worked for TCU. I mean, all their best wins are against Big 12 teams. It's not like they've got a big old shiny win in non-conference. And they lost this weekend and still finished number 3. At no point was anybody saying, well, TCU scheduled such and such in the non-conference.
That crappy school that they scheduled and no one know of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
all right.
We
did our Monday overreactions on the schedule. It was very organic. We just ranted about stop playing tough teams. The thing is, Anwar's he's never been, as long as he's been here, he's never seen Texas go 3-0.
Never.
See, you have to understand that's where we're coming from. Anwar's been here nearly a decade. He's never seen 3-0.
Nope. Sounds good. I have seen the expectations of a season. I've got it. I know what's going to happen. I know because I have this thing so memorized. Everyone's going to be kind of iffy after the bowl game. Everyone gets excited around spring football. Everyone's excited about what guy did this in practice, this and that. So everyone gets hype off our practice notes. Summer workouts happening. Who's doing what where? Catch is always asking me about who's working out 7-on-7 and things to that effect. We get around to the season. And like clockwork, you and I start doing shows in August. We start talking about 8 wins or so. They were like, you stupid. This team could compete for a natty, this and that, right? So we get shouted down. It's a natty thing. They play their first game. They're ranked. Everyone's excited. Then they go into week 2. They play some really good team. They lose. And then it's like, well, all our goals are still ahead of us. It's like, shit, here we go. All your goals are still ahead of you. I know. All your goals are still ahead of you. And then we just keep going, and it's like, all right, well, got to get to the OU game and see what happens. And then I'm just saying, just make your life easier. That's all. I don't want to hear – I'm tired of all our goals are still ahead of us, and I'm tired of getting seniors to a bowl game. F those seniors. How about get your seniors to a New Year's 6 game? How about that?
Well, here's the thing, Anwar. This is how I would explain it to Texas fans. Imagine this year is a year where there were 12 teams in the playoff. Texas finished, I think, 20th in the playoff rankings. Mm-hmm. Take that Alabama game off and you put another W on the 1-loss column, and they're 9-3. They're right there.
Yeah.
They're right there. I mean, maybe they're 13th, maybe they're 14th, but maybe they're 11th. Maybe they're 12th. And Texas was a team that was a darling in the computer rankings. I think they finished 8th in the Sagarin, and I know playing Alabama helped in that respect. But you lost the game. It did more damage than it did good. And, I'm just saying, if you're 9-3 Texas right now and there were 12 teams in a playoff, you'd at least have your name being discussed on Sunday of the announcements as one of the teams that were either just got in or just got left out.
Yeah. And
you can say, well, if you got left out, maybe they should have played Alabama. And then they lost, and they're 8-4, and now they're 20th. So, there's the fine line between being 20th and 12th in future years, I don't think people have truly grasped what it means for there to be 12 teams in the playoff in just a couple of seasons. Think about how worked up we get in March over who the 64th team in the tournament should be for basketball.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's like first take conversation for days and weeks. Like, who are the bubble teams? Who's in danger of not getting in? We're going to get in 2 years from now. And in the month of on November 1st of like 2024, every team in the top 25 is going to think we've got a chance to make the playoff. So instead of talking about 5-6 teams, we'll be talking about on a regular weekly basis the 25 teams that have aspirations for finishing in 12 spots. And I don't know that we've never lived that before. I'm telling you, though, it will make the conversation around college football this weekend pale by comparison.
Catch. TCU has just told everybody, don't overthink it, right? I saw someone just said, want to be the best, you got to beat the best. SEC, the SEC said that. SEC, I'll tell you this, and everybody else who's here, TCU's non-conference schedule this year was Colorado, Tarleton, SMU, and they are in the CFP. Don't overthink it. Colorado, Tarleton, I'm assuming I'm saying it correct, and SMU, and they're in the CFP. So you can go and tell yourself, I got to beat all these killers to get in. Or you can say, you know what? Let's just go ahead and schedule some other guys, get some wins. And by the way, we could be the number 3 team in the country.
Just for the record, in Texas, it's Tarleton.
Tarleton?
No, Tarleton.
Tarleton.
It's almost like not an E in, but it's Tarleton.
Tarleton. Is this a school in Texas?
Yes.
So there's a Tarleton, Texas. Where is this located?
In Tarleton.
What part? Like north? Where are we at? Is this?
I think that's like a West Texas thing. I once got like it's in Stephenville. Which is like on your way to West Texas, but not quite completely outside of the Metroplex touch.
What's the school known for?
High school football.
So
Stephenville, Texas is known for its high school football. Tarleton State's mostly known for their basketball program in recent years.
You know what? I learned something new today. Didn't know how to pronounce it. Didn't know this place existed. But now, is Stephenville, are they in the Final Four in the state?
No, it's been a minute since Stephenville has been Stephenville.
Okay.
It's been a minute.
Well, they played Colorado, Tarleton, no disrespect to them. Is it Tarleton or Tarleton State?
It's Tarleton State.
So they played Tarleton State. I hope I'm saying it right. And SMU, which is easier for me to say. Blake says Stephenville just won a state title 2 years ago. Hey, props to Stephenville. I'm gonna do some research on Stephenville. The bottom line is they didn't play anybody really of significance.
Stephenville High School might have been a tougher non-conference opponent.
So now you do that and you're in CFP, and now you're talking about, well, we should still play Ohio State and Michigan and go down this list of these killers. I'm like, no, actually you shouldn't. You should stop that. Don't do that.
Hey, I'm the guy that said they should have canceled Alabama last year.
Yeah.
And you thought it's not that you disagreed with the overall sentiment of like clean the slate and make it easier. You just thought with 9 months to go that you couldn't cancel Alabama. And I was like, yeah, you can. You can absolutely do it. And you can schedule Tarleton State. And now you'd be 9-3 right now, and you would be ranked higher than you are, period.
Okay, everyone knows I've been ragging on Sam Houston State lately. Who wins between Tarleton State and Sam Houston State in a football game this year? Catch.
Well, did they play each other?
I don't know. Well, I barely knew the school existed until just
Let me look up how Tarleton State even did this season.
I'm just curious now.
I can't say that I know.
I don't know about Tarleton State.
I want you to blindly pick or just guess a record.
They played TCU, so they got to be pretty competitive. So I'm going to guess they finished 8-4.
They finished 6-5.
6-5. Ugh.
Here's what Tarleton State, and by the way, I'm going to answer your question in just a second, okay?
Okay.
So TCU, by the way, there's been no Tarleton State mention at all during the playoff discussion. Otherwise, we would already know this. Somebody would have said, well, can you really put TCU in there considering what they did non-conference? Didn't matter. So Tarleton State opened the season at home with a big 29-13 win over Mississippi Valley State.
Oh.
Then they lost 59-17 in Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
Then on family weekend, they beat Eastern New Mexico 41-6. They beat North Alabama 43-28.
Oh.
They beat Southern Utah 42-20.
Cooking.
And then it started to fall apart for old Tarleton State. They lost 41-24 at Stephen F. Austin. They won 24-10 against Southwestern Baptist. And then against Sam Houston State.
Yes.
In Stephenville at home.
Yes.
They lost 40-21.
Sam Houston State for the
Put it on them. Put it on them. And then they lost to Abilene Christian. Then they lost to Utah Tech, which I got to be honest, didn't know that was a thing. Just like you didn't know that Tarleton State was a thing, I didn't know that Utah Tech was a thing. And then they finished the season with a big win over Houston Christian. Scheduling Tarleton State did nothing to harm TCU this year. In fact, you could make a case that if they'd done what Baylor did and they did a home-and-home with BYU, and this year Baylor went and played at BYU, you could make a case that would have been one of those 50-50 games that TCU ended up winning most of the season. Maybe they lose that game and now they're out of the playoff. Okay, we made our point, Anwar.
Fair enough. Okay.
Do you have any thoughts on Washington?
No, I mean, the only thought I have is having to endure a lot of Sarkisian questions about his time at Washington. Like that, it's the thing I'm dreading the most of this
That's
month.
old. That's like a decade ago. Who cares?
Let me be nice. You've heard media people ask worse questions.
Oh, I know that.
And you've heard our media corps ask worse questions.
I'm okay with Washington people coming on like a Zoom conference and asking that question. That's fair. But if you're a local media person and you're not asking something that's relative to the actual 2022 Texas Longhorns, what are you doing?
Catch. You already know what time it is.
Writing articles on that shit is why the newspaper business dying in the first place. Really, what people want to know, how's the backup line looking? Who did good in bowl practices? They don't care about Sark at Washington 12 years ago. Okay, rant over.
It's a rant, and I'm telling you, you already know what time it is. You know what's going to be. You know, Catch. Can I do this? You know, we heard about something crazy that happened in practice and something that was like a blew up. And I'm not going to even put any bad things out there. So just something crazy. You know, it'll be 15 minutes into the press conference before that question ever comes up, because it'll be, so how's San Antonio? Did you guys like the Alamo where you were there? Like, tell me some of your best San Antonio. What's it like over here? Like, I hate what's it like, by the way. I hate that question. You know, it's going to be all about that. You guys go to the rodeo. I mean, it's going to be crazy stuff like that. No, Houston would have been rodeo.
I think this is actually a really good game on paper. You know, you and I have been playing Prize Picks all season long.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, because I'm a degenerate, a lot of times the last games at night are those or sometimes you're looking for a Friday game or a Thursday game and you get these Pac-12 teams. So I've paid attention to Michael Penix this season. He throws the ball a lot.
Yeah.
Like Washington, he's thrown the ball more than 40 times in a game 7 times this year. 3 times he's thrown it more than 50 times in a game. So this is more so than probably any team that Texas has played this year. Like they're gonna throw it a lot. Washington's really good defending the run. They're 33rd in the country, but they give up a lot of points. So they're one of these defenses that on paper Quinn Ewers should rip apart. This should be take Xavier Worthy and more on Prize Picks, and yet it comes down to how good is the passing game going to be with Quinn? On paper, they should bust a cap in Washington in the passing game. This should be everybody puts up a stats game because that's kind of what the Washington defense is. And yet, you know, that's not where Texas ends the season being hot. I think what's really interesting, Washington is on that Washington offense with Michael Penix Jr., who, by the way, announced last night on Instagram that he's coming back for next season. So I'm sure he's thinking this game's a bit of a platform game for him.
Mm-hmm.
They are 57.1% offensively on third downs. Best in the country. 57% on third down.
It's amazing.
And Texas defensively ranked 78th in the country at 39.7. Basically, third downs will be big.
No, I you know, they clearly are a great offensive team. But I gotta ask you a question, Catch, as relates to the whole conversation of the game. I don't expect just where I'm at right now. I'm not reporting anything, so guys, relax on this. I'm not reporting anything. I don't expect Bijan to play in this game. I'd be surprised if he plays in this game.
When do you think that announcement would come out? Before they practice, right?
It's got to come out soon.
It'd be like a this week thing, I think.
I would think so. So I would think it would have to be pretty soon as far as that. And I think Bijan goes pro. He sits this thing out, you know, for all the reasons that make sense. Does anything change for you if Roschon is the starting running back as opposed to Bijan in this game?
Yeah, I mean, Roschon's not as good as Bijan. It doesn't mean that he couldn't run for $150 in this game. Although, again, Washington against the run has been good this season. Where you would think if you're going to score 40 against Washington is that your passing game really did what most teams' passing numbers have been against Washington this year. This is a hard game to call early on. I think Washington will want to play in this game. I think they'll be motivated.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, you know, a lot of times these games, these types of bowl games are decided by motivation. It'll be. I'm curious to see not just Bijan. Does Demo play in the bowl game? Does, you know, anybody with NFL aspirations play in this game? Because I would contend that if Demo said, I'm gonna hang him up, I'm getting ready for the pros, I don't want to risk anything, that's a bigger loss than Bijan because of the linebacker situation at the school. Just not being suddenly it's like Jalen Ford is playing 60 minutes with Tucker Dorsey on the field a lot. I don't know. But yeah, does Bijan impact the way I view the game? Yes. Does it impact the way you view the game?
Yeah. I mean, because we know what Bijan is. I mean, again, there's something to point out. Was it in the Baylor game where how many straight runs was it? Was it 21 straight carries in that game catch that they just went on the ground? It was in the 20s. I think it was low 20s. The long story short is Sarkisian knows at any point, if he says, look, this passing game ain't working, let's just go ahead and just run this ball. For sure you got a guy like Bijan who can do it and handle it. The question is, if he's not there, what does it look like? Yeah, it's a little bit more sketch because, like, to your point, Roschon is good. And, Keelan has some explosiveness, and we hear good things about Jonathan Brooks. But we're talking about Bijan, a guy who, is one of the better running backs in UT history and best running back in the nation. So, I think when we know this, they've got a high-powered offense that's coming in here. And, if this Bijan decides to, sit out, then, I'll be curious. It changed it just a little bit for me. Absolutely.
So our guy Cole Patterson just dropped this in the Slack channel, and I want to bring it up on the show. He's saying to us, it doesn't feel like a state secret, so I don't have a problem sharing this particular thing. Tommy Brockermeyer expected to be in the portal. If you're Texas, do you take Tommy Brockermeyer? Is he a guy that you would say, we're bringing you in, you compete with Cam Williams for the starting right tackle job?
I mean, I say yes, Catch, because there was so much of a hubbub when he didn't come here. So to me, if you were upset that the previous staff missed out on Quinn, and you were upset that you missed out on the Brockermeyer twins, right? And what that meant for people who are lifelong Texas fans, then yes, if he wants to come home, then you bring him back and say you've got a chance to compete. So absolutely. I don't think you turn down any kind of depth in the offensive line. And hell, if you're Tommy, hey, there's 50 G's waiting for you if you want to become a Texas offensive lineman within the next couple of weeks.
I'm going in completely the other direction. I'm saying no.
Ooh.
I'm saying if you're Texas and you want to take an offensive lineman, you need to go into the portal and take somebody who's proven in the offensive line. You go and look, it's easier said than done because I'm like, hey, go get Miles Hinton, who is a former 5-star player and a 2-year starter at right tackle for Stanford. I'm saying go get that guy, and that's the type of profile to bring in if you're going to bring in an offensive lineman. I'm not bringing in someone who's unproven. Tommy Brockermeyer needs to go to TCU or Baylor or somebody that he can disappear for a year, and then maybe by his junior, senior year, if he's starting, then that will be the only thing that matters. The thing is if Tommy Brockermeyer were to come to Texas, it's a little circusy in that he's not yet a good player at the collegiate level, but there will be, and by that I mean there are days he mostly hasn't dressed at Alabama. So to bring that guy in, I think, I don't know. If it's me, I'm looking for proven right away. Because they think Cam Williams is their starting right tackle of the future. He ain't taking Kelvin Banks' job. That is never happening.
Yeah.
Ever. No offense. Kelvin Banks better. So it's a matter of, do you think he can come in and be a starting right tackle right away? And I don't think the answer is yes. Because I don't think the answer is because he's completely unproven at this point to be worthy of being discussed on that level. Well, I don't think Texas is the place for him anymore. I think he needs to go to, I don't want to say a step down, but if he went to TCU and didn't play right away, nobody would pay any attention. If he goes to Texas and is running third team on the first day of August practice, it's a story. And I think that when you're a 5-star guy coming back, you got to find the best situation possible. I don't think Texas is it for him anymore. It is not the same outlook on the offensive line as it was when he made his decision. And Texas was so thirsty for a guy with his profile and a guy that was a legacy, but they're not quite as thirsty as they used to be.
Man, what a difference a couple of years makes, Catch.
For real.
You talk about life coming at you fast. You've got now you're saying like the Brockermeyer twins, I don't really need them. Some Texas fans are down on Quinn, where it's just so interesting. Like those were like the daggers that were supposed to be the recruiting daggers that killed everyone in the previous staff. And a couple of years later, it was like,
You might not have got Kelvin Banks if you had Tommy Brockermeyer.
Yeah, it's fast. It's just fascinating how fast life comes at you, how things change.
Let's knock out some super chat questions while we've got a brief moment. Tom G says, what up, OB fam? Onward, can't wait to see you, Eric Blake, and the crew in Dallas. Gonna have a blast. Section 236. Does he mean San Antonio?
I hope he means San Antonio, because if he bought a ticket for an event in Dallas, we're not going to be there.
By the way, Tom G had one more super chat question. If QE is not Quinn Ewers, is not significantly improved after 15 practices and perfect playing conditions, are you worried going into the spring? Good question.
I don't know if the practices mean something at this moment for me, Tom. It's going to be that bowl game. That will be the lasting impression. Catch, Casey Thompson, his whole aura was what he did in that bowl game, right? I mean, just that is what we knew, and that's what carried Casey. It really ended up being the thing that during that offseason between Casey versus Hudson is the thing I kept going back to, saying, look at what this guy did in the bowl game. It was, to your point, the last memory that you have. When you look at Sam Ehlinger, and what he was able to do against Georgia, right? That became the thing that, man, we're back, all the other kind of stuff, right? That became the last thing. To me, it's not necessarily going to be the practices. If you're talking about practices, I'm more interested in see what Malik does in that backup role now that Hudson isn't there, more than anything else. Like that, to me, is more interesting from a practice standpoint. What I want to see, though, is what Quinn does in the bowl game with having a chance to take a step back, get healthy, 3 weeks to kind of get healthy, prepare. That, to me, is more interesting in the bowl game.
I 100% agree with you about the Malik Murphy thing. Tom, I would say everybody wants to say that bowl workouts are like a second set of spring workouts. I think it's cliche, but it's not really like that. I mean, first week of practice for bowl workouts a lot of times is focus on younger players. And then that second week of practice is getting ready for the bowl game. So it's not the same as open competition. We're going to scrimmage, for the final 12 periods and do 7 on. It's different the way that the practices are run. No. Because I think what Quinn needs to significantly improve, you're not improving in 15 practices in the next 3 weeks. He needs to commit himself to the position itself and digesting the offense and knowing what everybody else is doing and, learning how to expand the number of progressions you can make. He is a guy that needs 9 months, not 3 weeks. So I wouldn't go overboard one way or the other with anything that happens with Quinn Ewers. My hunch is I think he's going to play pretty well in this game because he's playing a defense that will be begging for him to have some success against. Now, I know I said that basically every week down the stretch of the season. I thought it would happen against Kansas. I thought it would happen at the end of the season in the final game. It never did quite go down that way. But I would not shock me if Quinn Ewers has a good Alamo Bowl game. And even that doesn't completely – it's what he needs. but he's got so much he has to work on, and that they'll be looking for him. Look, I can tell you right now that behind the scenes, there's some questions about Quinn Ewers. Like, the passing offense wasn't good. The coaches aren't going to blame themselves. So there has to be somebody that takes the fall for that. And I think right now, if you're talking about Xavier Worthy, if you were talking to Xavier Worthy and you're the head coach if you're Steve Sarkisian, you are doing everything that you can to paint a picture that the quarterback position will be better next year than it will be this year. That this year was an anomaly. But you got, I don't know, like, you can't convince him of that until he sees it. And, Xavier Worthy's a really smart dude. He ain't going to be fooled by the Jedi mind trick during bowl workouts. It will be something that I'm curious how he sees it in the spring. And it makes what Anwar, you mentioning with Malik Murphy, a potential competition along with Arch Manning. What are the rep allocations in all of that? Will be really interesting to see.
By the way, Catch, before we go too far for that, just wanted to back that. That game is obviously on December 29th. Arch Manning starts his first day of class on January the 9th. Okay, I had to look it up while we were talking. So literally less than 2 weeks later, Arch is on campus. He's at UT, walking around, finding his classes, so on and so forth. So when we start talking about off-season narratives, and narratives is always the great thing, but it's a thing that coaches are going to remember and see. If he's got to have a good performance when Arch is going to be here less than 2 weeks later, if you're Quinn, you want to go ahead and do the damn thing and just let it be. But what you don't want is like a so-so performance, and then the next great guy steps foot on campus, 12 days later, whatever that math looks like.
Here comes Arch. It is happening, guys. Brandon asks, if David Benda stays, do you think he starts at linebacker next to Jalen Ford next year? No, I do not. David Benda is not good enough. And you know how I know that? He barely played this season when Texas had backup linebackers that I questioned whether or not they were good enough. So David Benda is who Texas – no offense to David Benda and any family members listening to the show right now, but David Benda hasn't proven to be a plus player at this level, certainly for a team with championship aspirations.
Fair enough. We got more?
Yeah, we got a few more. Matt Anderson wants to know, what do we think happens with Reuben Owens now that the Louisville OC is leaving to take a head coaching job?
I mean, we're just going to keep it a buck. As long as that NIL deal is good, I think Reuben's good.
I tend to agree with Anwar. I will say this. If he doesn't sign with Louisville, the backstory of his recruitment will eventually turn into one of the great recruiting stories of all time, because the details will get out. It's like Eric Dickerson taking the Trans Am from Texas A&M and then going to SMU and basically saying, you gave me the car, what are you going to do about it? There's a little bit of Reuben Owens and Eric Dickerson that is more than just them being running backs from the state of Texas. I'm fascinated to see how this plays out, because if he doesn't sign with Louisville, Anwar, I feel like Louisville people will get the word out on what happened. And it'll end up being like one of those recruiting stories that people talk about for a really long time. I know some of you are watching this and want me to say it out loud. I can't. But what I'm saying is,
you said, I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
I'm just telling you. I'm telling everybody out there, if he does not sign with Louisville, it will get out how his commitment to Louisville occurred in the first place. And I think it'll be a story that's remembered for a really long time. I'm sure not going to forget it. It's in my head right now.
The views and thoughts expressed on this podcast are that of Jeff Ketchum and Jeff
Yes.
Ketchum, and not necessarily Orangebloods Inc.
And I am not on any Rogue Shop products this morning. Not yet. Not yet. Brent Jackson, Bucknell to replace Cook. Okay. Sure. Look, I think if I don't know anything about Brent Jackson at Bucknell, but if he's a guy that fits the profile of what I mentioned earlier, if you're taking a guy that's younger, who's had a lot of early success, but he's coming from a small school like Bucknell, for me, if you're Texas, you want to take two guys. Like sometimes it takes a guy from Bucknell a year to make the adjustment. And then in year two, that adjustment to Division I football and FBS football is taking place, and then they end up being really good. If you're looking to replace Anthony Cook, I would be more nervous about doing so with someone who doesn't have major college experience in their profile. I mean, we saw that a year ago. Herman brings in a guy from McNeese State, and it took a while, and eventually, I've already forgotten his name. Who was the guy last year?
Oh, the DB, right?
Yes.
Darn. Damn.
See, I put you on the spot.
There you go. And point proven 2 years ago, but your point has been proven.
Yes.
Like, because the fact that we're like, what was that guy's name again? He was supposed to be the hot thing. Yeah. There you go. Carson said it. Darian Dunn.
Thank you. Darian Dunn was a good player by the end of that season. And I think they're glad that that they had him. And I think they would have loved to have been able to keep him for another year. But it took him almost a full year before he settled in and really got the grasp and wasn't playing at all early last season. Mm-hmm. That's it on Super Chat questions.
Cool. You want to wrap it up?
Yeah. You got any final things that you want to say?
No, man. It's holiday season time, man. I'm in a good mood. We know what the end of the year looks like, so we can get geared up for that as far as getting ready for the Alamo Bowl, which got this place memorized of all the non-Texas bowl games. I think I got the Alamo Bowl memorized better than the Houston Bowl, but I know exactly where I'm staying. I know exactly how to get in and out that stadium, the press conference center, everything. I've got that thing set. The good part of the Alamo Bowl catch, we actually get the chance to talk to coordinators. So because it's so that'll be the good part is Sarkisian doesn't control that. So we actually will get some coordinators next week. In the next few weeks.
Oh my God. What are we going to do with ourselves? We need to let Alex Alex, what questions do you want to ask the coordinators? Since we don't ever get to ask any questions, if that's on a Zoom call, maybe Alex needs to jump in and ask some questions. Final portal thoughts, or excuse me, man, I haven't had any rogue today, and I just can't speak.
Yeah,
I've made more mistakes in this particular broadcast than I make in like a month.
Don't feel bad. That was me yesterday when I was recording, and I was like, I hadn't had a drink yet. And why can I not complete a sentence? And I told Blake after, I was like, man, I should have had something. Because, you and I might be those people, like those rappers in the studio who need a little something to chill out in order to produce. Like, we might be that kind of that.
Maybe. It's as good of an explanation as anything else at this point. I'm good. I could talk NFL and go on tangents. Tom G real quick wants to know if Gary Patterson is coming back. It's too soon to say. I think that, Gary's probably looking at what his options look like for next year. One of the things we know about the coaching deal is that after the bowl games is when we oftentimes see coaches make their moves. They got to take recruiting into consideration. You got to wait and see when the coaching merry-go-round stops. Some schools won't make coordinator hires until after the playoff. Like, there's a lot of things involved there. It's probably too soon to know about Gary. I'm going to say no. But, that's just me, gun to my head, what my reaction to that would be.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't know, if Gary's thing is that he just wants to work at UT, for the rest of his life and just be an analyst. I think he's a good, played a good role, but I'm sure he's looking to see what comes open, and if something good comes open, he's there. I haven't really heard his name being tossed around that much, so we'll see. He may have to go a coordinator route to get back in there, and then of course, does he want to move outside the state of Texas? If I'm Gary Patterson, no catch. You know what I do? I open up the Gary Patterson coaching clinic, and I just mentor high school coaches throughout the state of Texas, throughout the country. And I just become that guy, when John Gruden had his quarterback camps and stuff like that. I'm just Gary Patterson, and you in Stephenville can come here and get mentored, and I'm going to hold camps and lectures and teach different things. Like, if I'm Gary at this stage of life, the Gary Patterson coaching clinic and coaching camps or coaching school, that's what I would do. And not deal with NIL and recruiting or all the other kind of stuff.
I'm with you, man. He should have enough money that I would never really work again.
Yeah.
I'd just go loom as a shadow over Sonny Dykes his entire career. He's got a statue. When you have a statue, you get to hang around if you want to. I would do like a Gary Patterson podcast. I would do anything that doesn't require me to actually work.
Yeah.
It's like, I can make $100,000 doing a podcast. Let's do that. I'll do that. That's easy. Anyway.
Yes.
Look, for myself, on our Richardson Rogueshop.com, use that promo code Orangebloods for Texas's #1 source of legal CBD and THC and more. I love going to the website and just surfing. It's a good way to just spend 20 minutes just looking at the different things that exist and trying to figure out how they might make you feel better or do better or exist better. But for myself on our Rogue Shop, Blake, the whole crew, I will see you later tonight. I'll have a very Portal extensive version of the OB After Hours show in like less than 6 hours. So with that being said, now realizing, I got that thing I'm doing later on today. You guys have a great rest of the day. Like that video, subscribe to the channel. Until tomorrow, when Anwar and I will both be back together again, talking about more things related to the Texas football YouTube channel. You guys take care.